Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to continue on our series of Got Questions. 2 weeks ago at youth group, we didn't have youth group last week because we were away at snow camp. But 2 weeks ago at youth group, we asked the whole youth group to say, what are some questions you have? Questions about the Bible, about faith, about what the Bible says, about creation, about God, about you, about anything that you want, things that you want to know the answers to. And so we came up with a whole ton of questions. It was fantastic to see some of the things that you all wonder about, some of the things that you want to know the answers to. And so Nathan asked me to take the first lesson because he's preaching this week. And so the first group of questions that we're going to try and answer is questions about sin. And so here's the questions that you all asked. It might not be worded exactly as you asked it because maybe somebody else asked a similar question. So Nathan just condensed all the sin type questions down to these questions. Sin, what is it? Where did it come from? Was it created? Why does it exist? And if it's God's opposite, is it also his equal? We're gonna dive into these questions about sin. And to do that, we're gonna start in, you guessed it, Genesis. Genesis, we're going to answer the question, where does sin come from and was it created? Here's where we're going to start. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. We're going to get a picture of the world as God created it when he finished creating on the sixth day. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then in verse 31, when he finishes creating, he creates the stars, the moon, the sun, all the galaxies, the earth, all the plants and animals and humans and angels and everything that he had created. God looked over all that he had made and he saw that it was very good. Now that's going to be a lot different than the world that we see today, right? If you look over the world, do the same thing God just did. Look over all the world, everything that God made. Is it very good? I bet your answer is, no, it really isn't. Bad things are happening all around me. There's death and politics are horrible and there's diseases like corona and this person died and that person got shot and this. No, it's not very good. It just isn't. In fact, that's the same thing God said when he looked at the earth again in chapter 6 of Genesis. It says that the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry that he had ever made them and put them on the earth, and it broke his heart. God was so sad that he had made humans. What happened between Genesis chapter 1, where everything was very good, and chapter 6, where everything is so broken that God's sorry that he ever made man and that it breaks his heart? Most of you probably know the answer to that, of course, is the Garden of Eden happened. Adam and Eve, they ate the apple, they ate the fruit, they sinned for the first time. But to understand that a little bit better, I want to jump all the way to the end of the Bible. I want to go to Revelation because we're going to answer a couple more questions. Why does it exist? Why does sin exist? And if it's God's opposite, is it his equal? Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 to 12 says this, and I'm going to jump a little bit in that. Here's a flashback from Revelation to all the way back, I think even before the Garden of Eden, that famous scene with the fruit and the snake and Eve and all that. I think that what preceded that is found here in Revelation chapter 12. And here it is, verses 7 through 12. There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels, and the dragon lost the battle. He and his angels were forced out of heaven. This great dragon, the ancient serpent, called the devil or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, he was thrown to the earth with all his angels. See, way back before Adam and Eve ate that fruit, Satan got in a little fight of his own. See, here's the deal. God created humans. When he created humans, he said, let us make humans. Let us make them in our image, to be like us, God said. I want humans to be like God. And so he did several things with that. He gave us the ability to think. He gave us the ability to be creative like he's creative. He gave us all kinds of wonderful things. He made us to live forever, to be eternal. So he gave us an eternal spirit like he is an eternal spirit. But there's something that he gave us that was, I think, the best gift and the greatest curse that humans ever could have asked for. And that's free will. The ability to choose. And apparently he also gave it to his angels, because Satan, that ancient dragon that Revelation just talked about, he was an angel. In fact, not just any angel. The Bible describes him as this beautiful, wonderful angel, as an archangel, as one of these angels who sits in the presence of God and takes care of God's needs, much like Michael. There's war in heaven because Satan was given free will too. And so he became this deceiver, and he starts accusing. And he starts to accuse God of not being what God ought to be, and decides that he wants to rise up and be God himself. And so he's thrown to the earth in chapter 12, verses 7 and 8. Michael and his angels defeat Satan and his angels, and he's thrown to the earth. And then verse 12 says this, and this is such a powerful statement. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who live in the heavens, rejoice. Why? Satan's been thrown out. He's gone. We won the war. So is Satan God's equal? No. He got thrown out of heaven by Michael. But terror will come to those on the earth and the sea. For the devil has come to you, and he's come with great anger, because he knows that he has only a little time. So Satan gets thrown out of heaven, cast out of heaven. He doesn't get to be part of God's ruling the earth anymore. But he's thrown to the earth. Why did God throw him to the earth? Why not just destroy him on the spot? Because here's the deal. God, again, he gave us free will. What is free will if it doesn't have a choice to be made? Does free will exist if you have no choice? What if I had one candy bar sitting on a table over here, and I said, you can choose any candy bar on this table you want? You'd say, that's no choice. That's no choice. I don't have free will in that. Oh, you can choose any one you want. No, that's not a choice. What if God put Adam and Eve in the garden and he didn't have the tree of knowledge of good and evil? You would say, oh, way better off. Except they wouldn't have free choice anymore. To have free will, to be able to choose, there has to be a choice between at least two things. And so God said, I'll make the choice simple. The choice is this: follow me, obey me, or disobey me. And so he puts one tree in the middle of the garden, and he says, this tree, the only one that you cannot eat. You can't have it. You can't eat from this tree. It's not for you. Every other tree, everything that you see that looks like it might be good to eat, take a bite. Enjoy. Don't eat this one. See, God made it real simple terms. Follow me or don't. Obey me or don't. Satan chose to disobey, chose not to follow God. And then he's thrown out of heaven. As for the question, is he more powerful than God? Is he God's equal if he's his opposite? Now I'm mixing a little bit because you could say, all right, is sin God's equal? Well, sin's an inanimate thing. It's a choice that's made. So I'm going to boil this down to, is Satan God's equal? Is he somehow some opposite? To find the answer to that, we look to Revelation chapter 20. Here's the end of Satan. Remember that verse said in verse 12 of chapter 12? It said, Woe to the earth. He's been thrown down, and he's angry because he knows he only has a little time. Here's what Satan knew was coming one day. Verse 1 of chapter 20. I saw an angel coming down from heaven with a key to the bottomless pit and a heavy chain in his hand. He seized the dragon, that old serpent who is the devil, Satan, and he bound him in chains for 1,000 years. Then the angel threw him into the bottomless pit. And then in verse 7 it says, when the 1,000 years came to an end, Satan will be let out of his prison. He will go to deceive the nations. And then in verse 10 it says, then the devil who had deceived them, he was thrown into the fiery lake of burning sulfur, joining the beast and his false prophet. They were tormented day and night forever and ever. Is Satan God's equal? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. War broke out in heaven. Satan got thrown to the earth. And then at the end of time, Satan's going to be chained up and bound for 1,000 years and eventually thrown into hell itself, which is exactly what was created for him. Sorry, I want to get back on the slideshow here. So here's the deal. Here's when all is said and done. Woe to the earth and sea, because Satan's coming down, and he did come down, and he deceived Adam and Eve. He got them convinced that you really shouldn't listen to God. God doesn't know what he's talking about. And so Adam and Eve had a choice to make. Continue to obey God, or use their free will to experience something more. Experience something better, is what Satan convinced them it was. Oh, God, he just doesn't want you to be completely like him. Even though God had created humans to be like him, he created them in his image. Satan convinced them, but he left something out because he wanted you not to quite be like him. God did leave something out. It's the knowledge of evil, the ability to do evil. He left it out of our mind. He said, I'm not going to corrupt them, because at the end of the day, I want to look at it and say, it is all very good. But we couldn't be like God without choice. And so Adam and Eve took their choice, and they actually created sin. Sin wasn't created by God. It was created the minute that Satan used his choice to disobey God. And it was created the minute that Adam and Eve used their choice to disobey God. God didn't create sin, but in a roundabout way he did, because he created free will. And free will gave birth to sin. We've got to choose. I love this passage, and you've probably seen it before. If you go into a lot of Christian homes, sometimes they'll have this statement, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's from a passage in Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. Israel had just moved into the land, into the promised land. They had conquered all these other nations. And Joshua says to them, choose to follow the Lord. Choose, take your free will and give it to the Lord. Follow him. And then he says, but if you won't follow the Lord, if it's not good to you to follow the Lord, then choose who you will serve. And he says, will you serve the gods who your ancient ancestors served, who didn't give them the promised land, who didn't take care of them, who didn't bring them out of slavery? You could choose to follow them. Or you could choose to follow the gods whose land you now possess. The gods who didn't protect the Amorites, the gods who didn't protect the people in all these cities that you're now living in. You could choose to follow them. And then he says, but as for me and my family, my house, we will serve the Lord. It's always come down to choice. Choice is what created sin, and choice is what you have. And by the way, it's the same choice today. Same choice today that Joshua answered there. It's the same choice that Adam and Eve answered, and it's the same choice that Satan answered. You have that same choice. Will you make him your God? Or will he just be God? If he's just God, then you can choose to serve yourself. You can choose to serve false gods. You can choose to serve money. You can choose to serve your own pleasure. Is he God or is he your God? Does he have say over what you do? Sin. What is it? It's taking our free will and choosing to serve us. Where did it come from? It's actually birthed from free will. Was it created? Yeah, it was created, but not by God. It was created by Adam. It was created by Eve. It was created by Satan. And it's created every single day that I choose to obey myself, to obey my own desires instead of God's. Why does it exist? Because I'm a stubborn man. Because you're stubborn. Because Satan was stubborn. Because Adam and Eve were stubborn. And if it's God's opposite, is it his equal? Certainly not. Not only did God have power over sin, but he also power over Satan. He also conquered sin by dying on the cross. Not only did he never commit sin, but by dying on the cross, he conquered sin and had victory over it so that we could even see victory over sin. Is it God's opposite? Is it his equal? It's not his equal. Not his equal. He bound Satan and he defeated sin. And one day, he'll conquer Satan completely. Ultimately, it's always going to come down to this one thing. What will you choose? What is sin? It's from us. It's from our choices not to follow God. Our choice to say, I am God. Choose today who you will serve. Choose today who you will serve. As for me and my house today, I choose to serve the Lord, and I hope that when I die, I will still be saying, I choose to serve the Lord. You choose to serve the Lord. Ultimately, it's the only real choice there is to make. There's choices about what are you going to eat. There's choices about what are you going to be when you grow up. But there's only one real choice. One most important choice. And that's who will you serve? Until I see you next, I hope you're able to come to youth group soon. But until I see you next, have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I love you so much, and we're praying for you at the youth group. Our leaders pray for students all the time. You are in our prayers because we care about you. Have a good and wonderful week, and choose to follow the Lord.